Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Alone, Season 7 is just hit Netflix. This is a reality show, reality TV competition, survival show. Talked about it in the past on this show. Reviewed it. It is one of my favorite shows to watch. I love every time there's a new season out. And Season 7 just hit. And this was a slight change to the format of the original show. This is a show where contestants are sent out into a remote area. Everybody is given, I think there's 5 miles between them. So they never run into each other. There's 10 contestants, and they have to survive. The last person to be out in the wilderness without tapping out or being pulled for medical reasons, etc. The last person standing is the winner. Season 7, they changed it up a bit. This was the title was Tales from the Arctic. They were all in on an island in the Arctic, and it was the person to last, or anybody that lasts to 100 days, won $1 million. Which there was only one winner. I don't know if there had been 2 winners, if they split the $1 million prize, because apparently in Season 8, they reverted back to their old format of just whoever survives out there the longest, regardless, wins. So anyway, I love this show. I love the purity of this show. Unlike most reality TV shows, especially survival reality TV shows, they're way overproduced. The show Survivor, they're not surviving just because they lose weight. Survivor is more of a political game than it is a survival reality show. This is more not Man versus Wild, Survivor Man, the Les Stroud survival show, where all the contestants, they film all themselves. They run their own audio and video in addition to having to survive. So they don't, the production comes, I think they visit them weekly for medical, to check their medicals. But other than that, they're on their own, aside from a GPS tracker, satellite phone that they use to tap out. So it's authentic. You're seeing people put in a rough survival situation, in the Arctic. They had time before the snow settled in to hunt for food and store food and build their shelters. But I love it. I love it so much. It's basically instead of just one Survivor Man, it's 10 Survivor people. And the one thing I love, there's a romantic feeling about, a part of me, and I'm sure it's the thing that a lot of people relate to, this romantic feeling of wanting to get away from everything and just going back to the bare essentials of life, the bare, the bare minimum of what it takes to just be alive on this planet as a human, instead of working all day and being exhausted and just giving yourself to a corporation in order to pay bills. The allure of just leaving everything behind and just surviving off of nature. There's a really big draw, a very romantic draw to that kind of lifestyle. Which similarly, Nomadland, the Best Picture last year, kind of gave a more realistic view of people that live without a home. One of which, there was a contestant, I want to say it was Callie, one of the female contestants in this season 7, is a person who considers herself to be a nomad, a person without an actual home. She just moves around, to different places depending on the year, and just lives off the land and lives, just kind of a simpler kind of life. So season 7, there's 10 people, 100 days, $1 million prize. A lot more predators in this season than previous seasons that I can think of. A lot of wolves, a lot of bears, a lot of wolverines. There are giant muskoxes and moose that also show up throughout the season. So a lot of big animals. Not that predators are the only danger. It's very interesting, this show, how just the smallest detail will take somebody out of the game. And if it weren't a game, like if this was just reality, like it was a few hundred years ago, people were living like this. I think a few hundred years ago, maybe longer than that. I don't know how long ago. I mean, there's still people today that live like this. So, but as far as widespread culturally people living like this, it's just amazing how often people must have just died back in the day when they, without proper medical care. You eat meat that's tainted, or like one of the guys got taken out. He got all cocky, caught a squirrel, and was like swiping the blood from the squirrel's mouth and eating it. And of course, he ends up getting a parasite or something. It's interesting to see how the smallest thing can take somebody out. Just the smallest mistake, the smallest misstep, like somebody carrying some firewood and their foot falls through a hole and they bust their knee. And then your knee's busted, and it's hard to like function and hard to do the things that you need to do if you have a busted knee. One of the first people out of the season was a guy who like he found a discarded boat hull in the forest. He decided to use it to fill with water and then lit a fire underneath it and had like a hot bath. And he was all like stoked about having this hot bath. But when he got back to his camp, he realized that his little flint fire starter stick, like a fire striker stick that he used to start fires, he forgot it. He left it somewhere. He lost it. And because that was his only means of fire, right? He says he knew how to do friction fire. Like if you're going out, if you're preparing yourself to be on the show alone on the show alone. I think they did a couples version of the show early on, where it was like brothers and then like a married couple. That was kind of interesting, because just one of them gets injured or something happens and they get pulled. But just if you're preparing to be on this television show where it's survival for 100 days, which is a long period to be surviving, and your only means of starting a fire, because you're not confident enough in friction fires, is one lighting source, one source of fire. That's horrible. And then to lose it so early on is just like, it just seems like amateur hour. So for sure, be confident in starting fires in other ways, aside from using this, the little striker stick. But yeah, he was the first one to get out, which was kind of funny. Then the second one was, what was the second one? The second one was, the dude's knee that gave out. And then I think the third was the parasite guy. But people started, like, there was a few that kind of, that got eliminated, that tapped out pretty early. And then there was a bunch that, like, it took a while. It took like 30 to 40 days before people started dropping off again, either having tough times finding food, because they're dealing with predators that are also hungry, that are preparing for winter. So their food stashes, became targets. Some people tap out just because, it just gets a little bit too hard. They miss. It's so easy to just miss going home, and they didn't really have any real hardships. It wasn't like they were being pulled for medical reasons, which happens later on in the series. They just miss being home, and they just can't stand, being out alone is another. So there's so many aspects of this show that can potentially take you out. Just your own mind being one of the big ones. People in the last season, season 6, there was a big issue with people burning their shelter down. In this season, there was a couple issues where a dude's wall where his fireplace was inside of his cabin, caught on fire, and he had to, like, in the middle of the night, and he had to tear the wall down. Thankfully, it didn't burn the entire structure down. It just burned the wall that the fire was near. It just like dried out all the wood that was used to build the wall. And then there was another one. The guy I was rooting for was Amos, who was he's from South America somewhere. I'm blanking on the dudes on where he's from now, and this is probably not going to tell me. No, it's not going to tell me. Yeah, I can't think of where. It's not Ecuador. I can't. I'm blanking on where he's from, but he's survived. Like, there was a civil war in the country he was from, and he fled to America. Like so many people do from South America and from Mexico, getting away from the shitty situations, the either whether it's war or cartels or just the negativity and violence of certain areas, fleeing to a place where they can just live a life and focus on just making a better life for themselves. So he was my guy. I was rooting for him the whole time. And then it got to a point where I think what happened with him, he tapped out. I think he was just losing too much weight and just couldn't, he couldn't focus. He was just losing energy. I think he lost his, he wasn't able to fish. He was having issues. It was like down to the top 4 or top 5. So he's, when you get to those ones, it's really tricky because it's, by then the snow sets in and it's really just about survival, who can survive the longest. But the crazy thing was, just as he tapped out, like, there's the scene where he's inside of his or he's just outside of his cabin, and he's, calling the production team to tap out, and he goes inside of his cabin to his shelter to, like, start packing. And just as he starts packing, his fireplace bursts into flames, and, like, just above the fireplace, it was like, because the way he had his fireplace, it was like he had a canister that was like the burner inside, and then it looked like it went out, and then there was a chimney on the outside. And I'm thinking just the heat of that metal container, that metal drum that he was using as kind of the heat where all the wood burning section, I think that just eventually got hot enough to ignite the wood that was right above it. But it was crazy because it was just after he called the tap out, and then his fireplace starts on, the external part of his fireplace starts catching on fire. He has to clear everything out. His structure literally just burnt down. Thankfully, he called and tapped out before, so it's not like, I mean, that would have been rough if, that was why he tapped out. But thankfully, he was safe. There was an aspect of the show, part of the new format, was not only that they had 100 days for $1 million, which is more money and I think a longer period of time instead of just last man out. They also did this post-show recap show, which I did not watch any of those. I might go back and watch it, but after watching an episode, to then be pulled out of that kind of idea that they're all out there on their own and they have this host and he's like, no, I'm going to interview the people who were featured in this episode, and I'm going to show never behind-the-scenes footage, which is cool, but it's like it totally took me out. Totally took me out. Like, I didn't want to hear. I think if I go back and rewatch it, I'll want to hear the interviews and see the behind-the-scenes stuff because I think that's very interesting. But as far as a show, the cohesiveness of a show and just like staying in that mind frame that they are out there surviving, to have that show pulled out, and then there's this Zoom interview show where, by the way, the host of this interview show had the worst video quality. Like some of the guests on there that are supposed to be like nomads and then like travelers have like crystal clear video quality. Meanwhile, the host of this show who's doing the interviews has like the worst video quality out of all of them. And it's mind-boggling that a TV show, the production quality of a TV show has just like the worst quality video when it comes to like this new format of like this post-show recap show. So I didn't watch any of those. There was a cool scene where one of the guys, the Rock House guy, killed a muskox. He like shot it with an arrow, tracked it down to wait for it to get tired, and then he just ran up on it with a knife and just stabbed it and ran past it and stabbed it. It was crazy. Also, the last few, Callie, I was a huge fan. The last three were two women and a dude, the Rock House dude, which, spoilers, he ended up winning that season. Callie was the closest. She was like stoked. It was like 80-something days in, and she's like, at no point was she like, she was just stoked to be there. The only thing that took her out was frostbite on her toes. She wasn't able to keep her toes warm enough. She ended up getting frostbite, so they pulled her for medical reasons. But other than that, like her ability to catch fish, her ability to do everything, her mental was like perfect. She had no problems. But I love this season. It was a lot of fun. It was kind of crazy that they had they're really putting them in situations where it's more dangerous, and it heightens the drama for sure. I'm excited for season 8, which apparently has already started to be released. I think it's through the History Channel. So I would imagine whenever season 9 is about to come out, they'll drop season 8 on Netflix. But anytime there's a new season of Alone, I love it so much. It is by far the best survival reality TV show, in my opinion. But yeah, few cool things. And by the end of the show, like even though I was rooting for Amos, like by the end of the show, I'm rooting for all of them because they're all just like they've been able to like survive, and like it's just amazing to see people succeed when they do succeed, because seeing how easily just the smallest detail can take somebody out, like it's really impressive to see somebody survive in those kinds of conditions. So if you're into those kinds of shows, I would highly recommend checking out Alone Season 7 on Netflix. Get yourself some amazing coffee over at stationhousecoffee.com and follow Station House Coffee on Instagram. That's right, people. It's the place where you get your amazing premium coffee that's brewed in small batches, all from the same place, single origin. It's the greatest coffee known on earth, brewed by experts, delivered to you by experts. Go get yourself some amazing coffee over at stationhousecoffee.com, and make sure you follow Station House Coffee on Instagram. Let them know that you're a fan of the show and you love coffee. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on IGTV, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/Inspired Disorder. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Peace out!